welcome to Christian Reacts, where we react to Christian content online. Today's video I'm going to be reacting to is an honest conversation between abortion survivors and providers. This is going to be, I believe, two women to the right here that survived an abortion, and this is going to involve two former abortionist doctors that did, I believe, at least hundreds of abortions.
Mother's D&E abortion that aborted my twin next to me, and I've always wondered what my twin actually experienced.
They would feel everything as far as being pulled apart.
Can you each share briefly how many abortions that you were involved with and the kinds of abortion procedures that you performed?
It's hard to know because I never counted, but I went through it with one of the residents who did the same clinic I did, and we figured out I probably did 500. I not only did first trimester abortions, but I went outside my program to learn how to do dismemberment abortions.
What were the ages of the dismemberment abortions that you did, the ages of the children?
I think they might have gone up as high as 24 weeks, but I'm not really sure. I know they were good-sized babies, and as awful as it sounds, it was sort of like the technical challenge, and the bigger the better. It's hard to say that now, but that was the truth.
Wow, imagine how sick that is. And I'm so glad this woman repented of this egregious sin of dismembering innocent babies, taking off their limbs and their arms and legs. I mean, it just sounds so demonic, so awful. And the fact that she's not doing it anymore is a testimony to her faith, and I'm so glad that she quit that. But imagine that sick mindset of just the challenge of literally harming and murdering an innocent baby. It's unbelievable.
What was it like for you to do those abortions?
I was so focused on helping the woman. Even as I counted the body parts, I did not see them as human. I didn't see them as people. It was just the procedure, the woman on the table. That was my focus, helping her, and I somehow was able to totally black out that child. I tried so hard to make this really painful procedure less painful for my patient. I never even considered what that baby was feeling, and we now know that they feel pain, and I just can't imagine the excruciating pain that they suffered.
I think this doctor really highlighted the argument that many pro-choice individuals make, and the Planned Parenthoods of the world and everything like that, is that they dehumanize the procedure as much as possible. They say it's freedom for the woman that has a baby that's pregnant, but they dehumanize the baby itself and just minimalize it to something that is simply a procedure to help the mother, whether that's no matter what trimester it is. And I think that's what's so dangerous about this, is that it almost ignores the baby's life. It ignores what the humanity is, takes it away, and minimalizes it to a procedure, which is very scary.
At my hand.
Between June of 1980 and February of 1985, in private practice, I performed just under 1,200 abortions. About 10% of them, or 124 of them, were second trimester D&E dismemberment abortions.
And the rest were they first trimester abortions?
Yes.
Did either of you ever know anyone or get involved with yourself with saline abortions?
I did saline abortions during my training as a resident. If patients were late 70s, technology was different. If patients were 13 weeks from last menstrual period or less, we did the suction DNCs in the delivery room of all places. And if they were more than 13 weeks, we'd make them wait till they're about 16 or 17 weeks and then bring them back for saline abortion procedures.
What was it like when you were doing saline abortions? Can you describe what the experience was and what happened during those abortions?
The procedure is to, in amniocentesis, put a needle into the uterus, into the amniotic sac, draw as much of the amniotic fluid out as possible.
Wow. Unbelievable. Take a look at this. 5 months. A 5-month. It's unbelievable. How can abortion be legal when this is how much a child has grown in the womb, and you can just take, just like that, absolutely just murder someone like this? Unbelievable.
To an amniocentesis, put a needle into the uterus, into the amniotic sac, draw as much of the amniotic fluid out as possible, and then substitute 20% salt solution. These women had to go through labor. I mean, the salt solution would burn the babies, and when they died, it would release prostaglandins and initiated labor. So these women had to go through labor. It was anywhere from, I saw them run anywhere between 8 and 36 hours between the time we did the saline injections and the babies were delivered. I never had a live birth with that procedure, although it was possible. It's just a horrific procedure, especially for patients. Going through the abortion at all, and then being through in labor that long. And that was why when D&E abortions were developed in the early 80s, my partner and I jumped on the bandwagon because we saw it as a far better procedure than the saline.
What did the babies look like after a saline abortion, and what were usually the ages of the babies?
They were 16 weeks and up, typically up to around, as I recall, maybe 21 or 22 weeks. We could do them later, but that in my hospital needed special approval, so we didn't get very many of those. The babies were intact, they were dead, but you could see where the skin was macerated or burned from the chemicals.
Claire and Melissa, you both have survived abortion attempts. Can you start, Melissa, first by sharing your story about the abortion attempt that you survived?
Yeah, as we're talking about saline abortions, that's who I am. So my medical records reflected my birth mother was between 18 and 20 weeks pregnant when a saline infusion abortion was forced upon her against her will, bypassing hospital regulations at that time. But through my medical records, we now know that she was probably more like 31 weeks when that abortion was performed. I soaked in that toxic salt solution. My birth mother experienced that over a 5-day period. And the belief, of course, was that it would successfully end my life. But the fear then became that she was going to lose hers in it because it was taking so long. So on the 5th day of the abortion procedure, I was finally expelled from the womb, delivered at St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, Iowa, not because they were intending for me to be born alive and they would provide me medical care, but simply because that's where that late-term abortion was being performed. And the day that I now celebrate as my birthday is the day that I was accidentally born alive.
Wow. I just got chills hearing that. I mean, it's hard to believe, and I'm so glad these women are speaking up about this because it's so important that everybody realizes that abortion is not simply a medical procedure, but it takes away lives. These women are a testament to being survivors of this horrific procedure. And the fact that every year she has to reflect on her birthday and think about that she wasn't supposed to be alive. You know, she was intended to be gone from this world. And it's just unbelievable. And obviously, I have to thank the Lord, our Savior, for allowing her to enjoy this life because that's what she was intended to enjoy.
And I think that's one of those things that people in our world take for granted, that it is a privilege for people to have a birthday. It shouldn't be, but what's the difference between the three of you and Claire and I? Why is it the day that we were accidentally born?
Claire, what kind of abortion procedure did you survive?
My birth mother was taken to have an abortion at 20 weeks, and she had a dismemberment, D&E abortion, and she was told that it was successful, that she could go home and go back to her normal life, but she went home and realized that things weren't right, and she was home for about 4 weeks, went back to the doctor, and they told her that she had been leaking amniotic fluid and that her abortion had been successful on one baby, but that I had survived her D&E abortion. And I was born just a few weeks later. I was born 10 weeks premature. I weighed 3 pounds. I had a dislocated hip and I had clubbed feet. And she had a dry birth, and so she was told that those complications were due to that and due to the abortion.
Claire, what is it like hearing Dr. Altman and Dr. Levatino, both of them having been involved with D&E abortions? What is that like hearing about that?
It's hard. I mean, it's hard for me to hear that the humanity of my twin was not recognized as you pieced babies' bodies back together. Because I know, like you said, at 20 weeks, that my twin must have felt something. And I mean, it makes me wonder. I've always wanted to ask a former abortionist, like, what would my birth mother have experienced during her abortion that successfully aborted my twin? Because she said it was incredibly painful and incredibly hard.
Yeah, this is a great question. And to go along further with the process of abortion, just we're not informed in schools, we're not informed at all in the media what abortion actually is, because everyone assumes, okay, it's terminating a pregnancy, and it sounds so simple and so logical and easy, and just terminate pregnancy, we have the freedom to do that. Okay, good. It's legalized in the United States, so it's considered a moral thing because the law is supposed to reflect morality. You know, just like putting murderers, putting people that assault women and all this stuff and everything like that, they're all supposed to be put to jail, and the law is supposed to equip morality into it in a way, because that's what we're founded on in the United States. We're founded on Judeo-Christian ideals. But when it comes to abortion, this is something that's not reflecting morality at all. And I would argue that with the Nazis and the gas chambers and internment camps for the Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans in the United States, these don't reflect moral ideals, and these laws were changed, and there was apologies issued to these people that suffered under these consequences. And when you look at abortion right now, again, we're not informed of what it actually is. Saline abortions, literally injecting chemicals into a baby so their skin burns and they die. I mean, this is real powerful stuff. This is not a horror movie. This is a reality movie. It's unbelievable. And literally dismembering a living baby is just, it's heartbreaking. So I'm really glad this woman's asking this question.
A lot of pain. It's, there's no...
Because she said it was incredibly painful and incredibly hard.
a lot of pain. It's, there's no anesthesia to unless you're under general. There's no real anesthesia to the body of the uterus, just the cervix. And you're going in and out and pushing and pulling, and they're cramping, and it's very painful.
Yeah, a little different in my experience. We would do suction DNCs up to 10 weeks in the office, but beyond that, we would be in a hospital. That was at the time. I know that's not the way it's usually done now. I think it's insane not having a patient be in a proper environment, because complications can occur with D&E abortions. So my patients were anesthetized doing D&E abortions, and they would not have gone through that. On the other hand, I always tell my medical students a story about doing a D&E, and this is why I know these are done in freestanding clinics, and I personally can't picture it. I had the experience of doing an 18-week D&E, and you're using the instruments to pull out arms and legs, but instead of arms and legs, I got the lady's intestines in my clamp. The uterus had been perforated, the intestine got grabbed and pulled all the way through the uterus to the outside. But I've got my patient, and this is why we did it in a hospital as a safety measure. This patient is in a sterile environment, anesthetized, get a surgeon, fix the bowel, complete the abortion, and she did okay. So I can't even picture doing it outside of a hospital environment, personally.
We were in an office doing those.
And I don't know the data on abortions, but most people realize, or it's mostly common knowledge, that abortions are done at clinics. So Planned Parenthood clinics or elsewhere, all these clinics, and that's outside of a hospital vicinity. So just the idea of performing this horrific treatment with no pain, even for the women, for the mothers, it's a very traumatic experience, and many women regret this. I never had any of those complications, but when I was on call later, after stopping abortions, we had a woman come into the emergency room with her bowel hanging from her vagina. They were concerned that she wouldn't live.
Did either of you ever have an incomplete abortion, to your knowledge?
Yes, certainly in my training I did. I'm trying to think of all the abortions I did once I was an attending. I have to imagine I had a handful, but not very many if I did, because I was getting very good at it at that point. But certainly in my training I did.
What happened in that training experience with the incomplete abortion?
In the particular one I'm thinking of, I had done a suction DNC on a patient, and everything seemed to be fine. And a day or two later, I got a call from the chairman of the department telling me that this woman was sitting home watching TV when she literally dropped out of her baby's arm on the couch or something, and obviously had a pretty severe reaction to that. And
imagine that you're sitting home watching TV and you think you completed this so-called procedure, and then an arm comes out of you. As a woman, what do you think about that? Imagine how horrific, how awful this is. You think this is some sort of horror movie and something like that, but this is real. I mean, imagine your child's arm coming out of you. That's extremely traumatic, in my opinion.
We brought her in and completed the abortion.
Melissa, you endured a saline abortion. Dr. Levatino, early on in his practice, was involved with saline abortions. Do you have any questions for Dr. Levatino?
One of the commentaries I hear often from survivors and women that we serve at the Abortion Survivors Network is that they aren't provided a proper exam. And I know in my birth mother's experience, that's what she experienced as well. The abortionist did not provide an adequate exam to know how far along she truly was. So I'm curious, Dr. Levatino, what your feedback to my abortionist would be.
I'm listening to your abortion story about your mom was projected to be, 18 or 19 weeks pregnant, and she was actually 31. And this is a medical term that is not complimentary. What kind of barber doesn't know the difference between a 19-week and a 31-week pregnancy? I can't even imagine that. And again, I teach medical students, and I try to impress on them several things. First, they are not agents of the state. The other thing, too, is that it is incredibly important to understand exactly what the gestational age of your patient is before you start an abortion procedure. And again, we weren't running a freestanding abortion clinic. This was my office. And it's different in that case. If you want to have your baby, that's great. If you want to have an abortion, that's fine. We knew that it was so important never to be caught in a situation where you had a gestational age that you didn't know for sure. We did ultrasounds on every single one of our abortion patients. And we had an ultrasound machine in the office. We did not charge them for those ultrasounds. That was part of our evaluation, make sure we never got in that situation. And it troubles me now when I hear about, this is a little more far field, but I've got to say it. I mean, I hear now about medical abortion or chemical abortion being done with internet websites where your contact with the patient is limited to either a video chat or text. How in the name of anyone can you determine gestational age by just talking to somebody? She'll give you her last menstrual period if she knows it. But you cannot adequately determine gestational age on video chat. You cannot tell if a patient may be carrying an ectopic pregnancy on a video chat. This is dangerous, and this is being promoted.
If you would have been my abortionist and you knew that my birth mom was 31 weeks instead of 18 to 20, what would you have done?
We're going to have a delivery. We did D&E abortions up to 24 weeks. If she was 31 weeks pregnant, I'd say, ma'am, it turns out you're actually 31 weeks pregnant, and we're going to see you for your prenatal care. And then we would talk to her in terms of, now, if you don't wish to raise a child, we can help you with adopting that child. This is what I say, this is the difference between working in an abortion clinic and an office. But we would have taken care of her for the remainder of her pregnancy if she wished to maintain us as her physicians, delivered her child, and then went on from there.
Wow, that's unreal. Imagine you believe you're only 18 weeks along. Not even only. I mean, that's several months, so it's not really only, but you're actually, instead of they're 18, you're 31 weeks along. And a former abortionist, even when he was conducting abortions, this doctor even said that he would have said, it's time to deliver the baby. Even he has enough morality to say that. But the other abortionist for this poor woman here was trying to murder this child. I mean, unbelievable.
Basically, you would have been talking about an induction or a partial birth abortion, which they weren't doing at those times, DNX. It's funny, even when I was actively doing abortions, when I heard about the DNX procedure, I thought, why aren't they arrested for murder? You know, it was beyond my comprehension. Even though I totally believed in abortion and did them myself, I could not understand why they were not arrested for that procedure.
If I treated a dog the way I treated unborn fetuses and embryos in abortions, that would be animal abuse.
Can you imagine the outcry if people heard that puppies were being ripped limb from limb with no anesthesia? People wouldn't condone it. You know, they'd be outraged.
Yeah, this is so powerful, and I think this is true with so much of the liberals and the extremists when they say, oh, like animals' rights and don't murder animals, treat them well and all that. But we literally have a human rights crisis right before our eyes since 1973, I believe, where babies are being murdered in the womb, dismembered, just like this gentleman said right here, who's a doctor. And the fact that this is happening and it's legal, and one political party is completely approves of this procedure, and the opposing political party is trying to cater to the secular mindset and be like, oh, we're not for this, we're not for abortion for a certain amount of time, but we don't want to ban abortions. No political party is standing firm with the pro-life movement and saying this needs to be banned unequivocally. And this is how we know we're living in very dark times. And the United States is going to be judged very harsh for what they're doing to children, what they're indoctrinating them with, and how they're treating them.
You shared a little bit, Dr. Altman, but what would you be doing to the dog that would be illegal that you could have done or you did do to the...
Dismemberment, as she said, literally tearing off arms and legs.
Well, the embryo or the fetus is alive.
Absolutely. That's what a D&E abortion is.
Both of you always completed the procedures. It sounds like you had one incomplete, but it wasn't a born-alive situation. Was there an aspect of abortion that you felt you were especially good at or competent at while you were practicing as abortionists?
I thought it was better than most of my colleagues. I felt I could do it as painlessly as possible. None of the others went on to learn how to do D&Es. It's funny, though, how God finds the dark places of your soul. The one thing that I continue to be proud about, even after I became pro-life, was that once in the clinic, woman was supposed to be 12 weeks. She actually was 16. Because I had the D&E training, I was able to complete her abortion because at the time, it was very stressful because she was bleeding. I thought she was going to bleed to death. And so I was really thankful that I was able to complete the abortion. I later met a survivor who related her story right before I was going to relate my story. And it turns out that her mother went in for D&C with suction at 16 weeks, which I cannot understand why the doctor even attempted it. He told the mother her head was too big, he couldn't complete the abortion to go home and she'd miscarry. Well, she never miscarried, and Jennifer was born. And I looked at Jennifer after she finished speaking, and I said, Jennifer, I'm so thankful I was not your mother's abortionist, because I could have finished the procedure and you would not be here. And that was the first time I thought, maybe this good thing that I thought I did was really a bad thing, and maybe that baby would have lived.
Melissa?
Wow, what a powerful testimony. I mean, imagine that. Imagine your profession is murdering children in the womb, and you see a child that's alive because their head is too big. I mean, thank you, Lord, for protecting that child, for protecting Jennifer, because so many people are out to do this procedure to murder children. And I know somebody I know someone distantly who even said that certain colleagues in the medical field enjoy this and want to do this procedure. They're really excited to learn this procedure to murder children in the womb before they enter residency. And this is something that is incomprehensibly evil. And sadly, in our society today, the modern world doesn't want to characterize it as evil. Just like what the Nazis did, just like what people that do genocides did, just like people like those in the Bible when people are sacrificing children to the idol Baal in the Old Testament. They don't want to call us evil out. So it's just very scary.
Claire, do either of you have any questions for Dr. Altman or Dr. Levatino, or anything that you'd like to say to them?
I survived my birth mother's D&E abortion that aborted my twin next to me, and I've always wondered what my twin actually experienced. and what maybe I experienced in the womb next to my twin. Could you describe maybe what both of us would have experienced?
A lot depends on the anesthesia that your mother was given. Again, in a procedure that I would have done, it was under a light general anesthetic. That anesthetic will eventually anesthetize a fetus in the womb. It takes about 8 or 9 minutes for those anesthetics to circulate into the uterus. Before then, they would feel everything as far as being pulled apart. I'm no expert on fetal pain. I've done amniocentesis, just amniocentesis for diagnostic procedures. You're putting a needle into the amniotic sac where the baby is, and you can hit the baby with a needle. You can't see them, and you can feel them pull away. And we're talking 16 and 17 weeks. So anyone who sits there and tells you that these fetuses can't feel pain, I don't believe that for a minute. So they would feel the pain of being dismembered prior, until and unless that anesthesia kicked in, if they're even using the kind of anesthesia that would do that.
And that's the crazy thing, is that this someone said right here, this doctor who used to perform abortion said that the fetus would pull away. So you know that that baby is sensing this pain, sensing this evil, and it's trying to pull away from it. Even if they couldn't pull away, it's still evil because it's an innocent baby. But the fact that the fetus is actually pulling away at 17 to 18 weeks, that just shows how conscious and just how alive this fetus is, which is a future baby.
In our case, there was no anesthesia, just a paracervical block, which just blocks the pain in the cervix, but the baby would not have been anesthetized at all. But again, it depends what your mother had. If she was feeling the pain, the baby was feeling the pain. It's so hard to be with abortion survivors, knowing that, I was a perpetrator, I'm the evil one. I'm just thankful for your forgiveness, which you've both given me. I'm sorry, sorry for all of us, but it's also very healing. I'm just thankful that God, ran after me and grabbed me out of that situation and allows me now to try to save babies instead of killing them.
From what I know.
That's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful to these women, these two women that survived abortions, to be in the same room with abortionists. I mean, this takes so much bravery, so much courage to be able to do this. And people don't realize this. Like, they think, maybe they're trying to get clicks and fans and for their organization and pro-life and all this stuff. I mean, sure, that's a byproduct of this, of the publicity of this. But to actually stand in a room with people that used to perform these procedures that killed millions of people since the 1970s. I believe it's like over 60 million at this point. And the fact that the founder of Planned Parenthood was racist against black people and wanted them eradicated, which is horrific. You can look it up. It's true. For them to be in the same room with these people and for them to give their forgiveness and to be one with God is beautiful.
My abortionist didn't practice anymore after I survived.
Interesting. Sounds like that person needed to find another career anyway.
Yeah.
Clearly wasn't very good at what they were doing.
When I think about my abortionist and even my grandmother was a nurse, right? She was either helping to deliver babies, or now I know at least one abortion, and I would suspect there were more. But when I think about the final days of his life, I've always wondered if he ever thought of me, and I don't know that you can answer that.
I can only speak for myself. Yeah, I think about them. I lost my daughter before her 6th birthday. My brother Mark was my closest friend in the world. He died of cancer 12 years ago. And I believe, certainly I want to believe, but I do believe that when my time comes, the two of them are going to be there. I'll know it's time because they're going to be there. I believe that, but it scares the hell out of me that maybe those 1,200 kids are going to be there too.
I would think.
Unbelievable. 1,200 kids this person murdered. And I could tell that he was very close to being emotional because it's a huge deal. It's a huge problem. And I'm really glad that he acknowledges the pain and suffering that he perpetuated in the past and puts their lives of the two loved ones in his life on equal parallel with the 1,200 babies, because they're all equal lives under God.
He would have to think about you. I think about the babies that I aborted, and they didn't survive. I think the fact that he stopped practicing after you were born, he must have thought about you.
Are there any other questions or anything else that either of you would like to say, or either of you would like to say to one another?
It amazes me that people in government even can get up and say that there are no abortion survivors. We don't need laws to protect them. And we heard people like Jill and you, and we know that abortion survivors are there, and we know that they're being left to just die or actively killed, and that there've got to be protections.
Well, and for me, when they
This is true, and the former governor, or current governor, I forget, of Minnesota, Tim Walz, who's the vice presidential nominee for the Kamala Harris campaign, he passed legislation to not protect abortion survivors, that they can just die if they're born prematurely or in delivery, that there's no protections for their life, even when they're breathing air outside the womb, which is horrendously evil, and just shows to all, it should be a very clear sign to all Christians in the United States that the United States is heading downhill, because if somebody like that can be the vice president or the second most powerful person in the world, assuming that Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States, that just shows how dark America has become, how far away America has fallen from Christ.
Dismiss us and marginalize us and try to shame us and silence us. I always like to remind people they're silencing and shaming the women, our birth mothers and mothers who are going through it. And they're doing the same to clinic workers, abortionists, healthcare workers. And so in the grand scheme of things, all of us are so much more alike in that respect. We have an abortion experience, and it's inconvenient to the narrative when it comes to abortion. And I think that's one of those things that brings all of us together, as we know the truth and we see one another's humanity. I look at you, Dr. Altman, and I don't ever think, oh, that's the former abortionist. I think, oh, there's Dr. Altman.
I think about Dr. Nathanson and how, he was instrumental in Roe v. Wade being passed. But as soon as he had his conversion and saw the baby in the womb on ultrasound and realized, what he was doing and changed his mind, then he was some crazy person who didn't know what he was talking about. Totally discounted.
Thank you all very much for being willing to admit what you've done and allow it to be used to expose the truth and to protect women like our birth mothers. We really do appreciate that. I know it can't be easy.
And I got to say this too. Women need to know that the whole thing is a big lie, that abortion is not the answer. We don't need abortion to succeed, and it is not health care. So much of abortion is a huge lie, and we're telling the truth about it.
Thank you all for being willing to sit here and share your stories.
Lila, thank you for bringing us all together and for hosting this forum so that we could meet and speak and tell the truth.
It takes a lot of courage and vulnerability. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just so powerful. And for any of you guys that watched this entire video, I applaud you, because I encourage everybody to sit through this entire video. I put the link in the description below. There's other clips that are coming out as well. And I encourage you guys to watch it, share it with your friends, family, social media, wherever you can, because this is a huge deal in America and really all around the world if you look at it. When you see countries like France amending abortion in their constitution so it's basically a quote-unquote right for people to do. When you look at the law, the amendment in Florida that's trying to legalize abortion into a much later term than the heartbeat bill that's currently in their state constitution right now. When you look at just the abortion rights, quote-unquote rights, that are being passed nationwide a couple of years ago during the Senate elections, it's heartbreaking that this is being done, that this is being passed. And this just shows again that we're heading into these end times where unrighteousness and vile behavior is becoming mainstream and even glorified in some ways. Abortion is being glorified as a right. Murder is being glorified as right. And this is something that is against God. And just like LGBTQ quote-unquote rights, whereas opposite against God, opposite against nature, this is just a huge problem in our society. So please like, share, and subscribe. Comment your thoughts below, please. And thank you all for watching.